That is not rain delicately, beautifully dripping into a puddle.
Go!
That is the sweat of ambition from the brutal heat training technique of Canada's rowing team. The women's 8 working out in the so-called erg dome. Heat forced in, humidity soaring. And yes, it is as miserable as you're probably imagining.
It did not look fun.
Yeah, it's painful. It's tough. It's quite gross to think about your body sweating out 3 to 4 liters of water, but it's real. But we kind of get into a grind, get into that flow state, and it makes it a lot easier looking around the room and seeing all your teammates working just as hard as you and knowing we have a common goal is pretty powerful.
Japan is so notoriously hot that the Summer Olympics of 1964 were moved to October. This summer's games could very well be the hottest Olympics ever recorded. So preparing means understanding each athlete reacts differently to the heat, and there are ways to get used to it, mitigate it. First, though, you have to measure it.
You swallow this pill. I took mine this morning at around 6 in the morning.
In fact, they've all had that pill. That isn't really a pill, it's a thermometer. The woman who distributes it takes all the measurements, crafts all the plans, and crucially cranks up the heat, is physiologist Wendy Pethick. She has to determine the line between training hard and treading into dangerous territory.
Humidity is expected to be anywhere between 70 and 90%. So what that does is that it shuts down our most effective heat loss avenue, which is evaporation of sweat.
So if your organs get too hot, what happens to you?
You shut down. And so the body is always going to preferentially pick safety. You're trying as hard as you can to thermoregulate, but at some point, if you're unable to do that, the body just completely shuts down.
When you see these women in Japan, know that before they get into their boat, they will have been wearing ice vests, ice socks. Slushy packets will be tucked into their uniforms. And long before Tokyo, they've been working on adaptation, which is what that thermometer pill they swallow is really all about.
And then you scan them somehow?
Yep, so we've got little monitors and it's telemetric, so it just transmits the data onto the monitor.
The goal is to make sure this kind of exercise imposes a type of thermal stress on their bodies for about 45 minutes at a core temperature of 38.5 degrees, about 1.5 degrees more than normal.
So if we have an athlete that heats up really quickly, then we know that we can back off on the work that they're doing so that we don't overcook them.
Forgive my crude question here, but does the pill just get absorbed or?
It gets voided when they're done.
The precision of it all seems to be working. Measurements of their effort and heart rates and how they feel show they are adapting. And adaptation is really the only option now.
Hello, Adrienne and the National.
Sailor Sarah Douglas, who knows the sun and abnormally hot waters will work against her, is just one of many Canadian athletes earning sweat bragging rights, showing off their effort on social media. She's been working out in an altitude chamber converted to a hothouse in Toronto.
Halfway through my 40-minute bike, and I'm sweating a lot. It is 33.6 degrees Celsius and 65% humidity. Okay, this is how hot it is.
Those working out like this routinely notice their heart rates dropping as they get accustomed to it. That will help.
Oh, yeah.
Canadian Brent Lakatos is counting on it.
It's going to be quite hot, quite humid in Tokyo.
He's a wheelchair racer who's been to 4 Paralympics. His strategy for his events in Japan is a DIY heat chamber.
I'm going to be getting a humidifier that grocery stores use, so a fairly strong one, and set that up inside my garage along with a heater.
For some Paralympians in particular, heat is even more challenging because depending on their disability, sometimes the capacity to sweat is diminished. All distance athletes really are vulnerable. 41-year-old Melindy Elmore is a marathoner who competed in Athens in 2004. Now she's off to Tokyo, or rather Sapporo. The marathon has been moved more than 800 kilometers north in the hopes of cooler temperatures, but danger still lurks.
In our minds as athletes, we want to always do things at our very best and our best pace and our best speed, but the heat is legitimately a factor, and we need to back off 10 or 15 seconds a kilometer to adjust for the pace.
But how can you do that in the middle of an Olympic marathon?
When you look at the results in Doha at the World Championships in 2019,
First ever midnight marathon. And
they ran the race at midnight. The field was on average 15% slower than their personal best paces going in. So then field will naturally adjust to that. And if you don't, then you're going to pay a really heavy price.
Her plan to get ready is to do what doctors usually tell the rest of us not to do. She trains at high noon in the interior of British Columbia.
Okay, hang on 1 second, Melindy. Our signal's breaking up a lot here.
Even just talking about the heat there in the heat is hard.
The computer's having some trouble keeping cool.
But we managed a few more moments to talk water. Because to miss a drink station during this Olympic marathon would be serious. So Melindy trains for the pickup. Bottles always on the right side, always a problem when you're left-handed.
Is there a level of stress to that act, especially given how important it is given the heat?
Oh yeah, 100%. Especially if people make sudden movements, it's really easy to trip and fall or have kind of a collision. And so you do have to be really strategic about how to actually get your bottle. You know, you can't go another 5K and not have your bottle if you happen to miss the water station.
Ooh, it's hotter on the bike, eh?
For the countries privileged enough to have the training staff and resources to prepare for the heat, it's hard enough. So imagine those nations that don't. Safety will be a serious worry.
Is there part of you surprised that these games are happening in this month in Japan?
I guess a little bit. I think with the way that the world is going now and with what's happening with climate change, any Summer Olympics, on any given day, it could be temperature extremes. And so I think athletes and coaches need to be prepared for that.
They are trying, just like every aspect of the Tokyo Games, what the world is about to watch will be a test and rife with risk.